This is NBC Nightly News, Tuesday, March 29th, with John Chancellor and David Brinkley reporting from the NBC News Center in New York.
Good evening. An intensive investigation was underway today to find out who or what was at fault in the Canary Islands collision, the worst disaster in the history of aviation. This afternoon, Dutch and Spanish investigators said the KLM 747, which struck the Pan American 747 on the runway, was not cleared fully for takeoff. But KLM says this would be unthinkable. And a Dutch team says the Pan Am plane did not turn off the runway where it was supposed to. So there are still many unanswered questions. 53 of the 70 survivors of the crash are being flown to the United States, and an American Air Force plane made a risky landing today at Tenerife. David Burrington has that story.
The pilot had his choice whether or not to risk landing. He finally decided to come down on the taxiway parallel to the main runway, which is still split in half by debris from the recent crash. The big Air Force plane didn't come empty. It brought a medical team, stretchers, and 500 body bags for those who died. In all, there are about 25 badly hurt survivors, 12 of them in serious condition. Those 12 will be taken to hospitals in the U.S. that specialize in burn cases. The plane was big enough to hold all the survivors, injured or not, but some decided they'd had enough of flying. They'll go home by boat. Meanwhile, Spanish soldiers today finally started clearing wreckage off the runway. That signaled that one phase of the investigation into the cause of the crash has been wrapped up. Until now, nobody could touch the debris as experts poked around for clues. A few took advantage of their last chance today, making sure that they'd missed nothing. What is left is so pathetic that it appears to speak only of tragedy. But investigators insist they are gradually discovering what actually happened, who is to blame. They've been interviewing survivors all day long. The probe itself continues in secrecy, although Spain insists officially that its air controllers were not in any way negligent. Reportedly, at least 3 of the aircraft recording boxes have been found. The boxes will be carefully analyzed in America. The Spanish government has agreed to this, since the U.S. has special computers to make the voices more distinct. But all this will take time, and officials here say privately it will be weeks, if not months, before any final conclusions are announced. David Burrington, NBC News on Tenerife Island.
The first stop for the survivors of the plane crash will be McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey. The hospital plane will refuel here, and doctors from the Brooke Army Hospital will get on to accompany the injured to the hospital's special burn unit in San Antonio, Texas. The doctors arrived here this afternoon on this plane. They brought special drugs and medical equipment because the doctors say the burn victims are now entering a critical stage in which they are most susceptible to infection. About 17 critically and seriously injured survivors are expected on the plane. Another 39 are able to walk or be moved in wheelchairs, and some of them may go home from here. Brian Ross, NBC News, McGuire Air Force Base, New Jersey.
Lloyd's of London and other insurance companies expect to take huge losses from the air disaster, $400 million more or less. The biggest crash in history will produce the biggest losses. A report from London and George Montgomery.
People at Lloyd's of London estimate that Tenerife could cost the industry up to $400 million, the largest single loss in the history of civil aviation insurance. Lloyd's is confident the industry can and will foot the bill.
Well, as I said, the aircraft themselves will be settled, I should say, within the week. As regards the passengers, this rather depends on whether the claimants finally feel that the amounts being offered to them are adequate to take care of their loss. In the event that they do, it could be settled in a matter of months. If they don't, it could go on and become many years.
Under aviation agreements, the maximum offer per human life is $75,000. But Americans can go to court in the States if they feel they deserve more and can prove negligence. It's a rare case in which no negligence is shown. For instance, the Turkish Airlines crash near Paris in 1974 brought American court settlements of up to $1 million. There's another important aspect to the case. Here at Lloyd's, they say this crash probably will push up aviation insurance premiums, and thus could be a factor in making airline tickets more expensive. George Montgomery, NBC News, London.
There are 575 grieving families as a result of the crash, many in the United States, others in Holland, and the little Dutch town of Bad Hoeverdorp was especially hard hit. John Dancy was there.
The death announcements began appearing in Dutch newspapers today, occupying one whole page. KLM, Pan Am, and the tour operator took out ads to express their sorrow and sympathy, and the upper house of Parliament today observed 2 minutes of silence. Probably no single village was harder hit than Bad Hoeverdorp, which lies in the flight path of the Amsterdam airport. Gerrit Grunewald, the town's milkman, lived here in a neat duplex. Last week, he worked in his garden and got it ready for spring so he could go on a holiday trip to celebrate his 60th birthday. With him went his wife, 2 daughters, 2 grandchildren, aged 5 and 7, and a son-in-law, 7 people in all. On Sunday, all 7 were killed in the crash. The Grunewald family had lived in Bad Hoeverdorp for more than 40 years, and they regularly attended the town's Dutch Reformed church. Now, only 4 of their children are left. The pastor of the church knew the family well.
The whole tragedy is too big to understand what happened. That shall last several weeks, months, years maybe, before we understand what happened.
Next Sunday, the people in the little Dutch Reformed church had been planning to celebrate Palm Sunday. Instead, they will hold a memorial service for the 7 members of the Grunewald family. John Dancy, NBC News in Bad Hoeverdorp, Holland.